Hello, it's your friend Phil here. I'm going to give you a few communication tips based on the curriculum by John C. Maxwell. It's called Everyone Communicates Few Connect. The section of it that I want to underscore, for those of you that have interviews coming up, I feel that this little piece could help you. You know, the question that often asks, why should we hire you? I'm going to give you a quick tip on how to answer that question, how to craft your response in such a way that you will come across as being convincing, and so that whoever you're communicating to will really grasp the essence of what you're trying to say. But before we do that, let's have a quick preview of this course called Everyone Communicates Few Connect. It's based on John's best-selling book, Everyone Communicates Few Connect. And I teach this curriculum. It usually takes about 8 hours long, so I'm just going to show you a few excerpts from it. So let's talk about the basic communication model. The basic communication model, as you can see, it has a sender and a receiver. Now you are the sender in an interview. The receiver is getting that message that you're passing across. But you need to be aware of communication blockers, communication barriers. As you can see, the message goes through a medium. The medium, face-to-face, real-time, your message is going through, but noise could hinder your message. Now, what is noise? Noise is anything that can impede your message. We call these communication blockers as well. Your job in an interview is to prevent these communication blockers from interfering with the message. You want your message to come across as cleanly and as clearly as can be. You encode with a lot of thought your message. And that is what is lacking in a lot of messages sent in interviews. They are not well encoded. They are not well rehearsed. The better a communicator you are, the more smoothly your interview will go, because communication is not just talking. It's not just speaking. It's also being able to actively listen. It's also being able to listen to the feedback, observe the body language of the interviewer, and understand what they are perceiving right now. If there's a frown, curious gaze, a gesture that is about to signal lack of understanding, this should be a signal to you to change something in your encoding and make sure your message comes across a lot smoother. So we learned this in Communications 101, right? You encode the message, you send it, the receiver decodes. The receiver's decoding the message could be as a result of many factors, could be culture, it could be as a result of the generational gap and things such as that. So whenever we communicate, we need to be aware of those things, and we need to tailor our communication to our audience. Remember, there's such a thing as communication styles assessment. You as a communicator, right off the bat, you should begin to observe what kind of communication does this entity, does this person prefer? You should be a great communicator in an interview to immediately observe if you're wasting the interviewer's time by going too slow, if you need to speed things up, if you need to be right where you are, if you need to ask questions, if you need to chime in, whatever. You do need to be a great communicator in every interview. The receiver sends the message, feedback message that is, after they encode it, send it through the medium back to you. And that's how it works. So there are barriers, of course, blockers to communication. But how do you minimize these barriers? Effectively state your message, minimizing potential communication blockers, the ones I mentioned previously and others. The receiver should effectively listen and accurately perceive the message, provide affirmation and feedback. So your job as the sender is to ask the receiver to communicate back if you are unsure that your message was understood, or in an interview setting, you could get round to asking questions that will illustrate an understanding from them or lack thereof. And if there's a misunderstanding, you want to make sure your points really come across as clearly as can be. You don't want there to be any shadow of doubt. There are several inhibitors, communication blockers, that could prevent this from happening. Some of them are lack of concentration. On our part, we need to be in the moment. We need to concentrate. It's their job to concentrate. Interruptions, get prepared for those. Those could happen in rare occasions where someone comes into a conference room, someone arrives late, someone asks you for stuff that you don't have. You also need to be aware of red herrings. Sometimes interviews deliberately throw in red herrings to see how you will react. Those are also noise. You need to be on your A game to catch those and think on your feet. The moment you get noise, some barrier, some blocker that is a red herring asking you for things that you didn't bring, or going off on a rabbit trail on their part, maybe someone in the panel, you also need to know how to succinctly answer and don't go on a rabbit trail yourself. Preconceived ideas. This one, I have found this one to be the death knell of an interview. Went into the interview, asked the wrong question based on preconceived ideas. Didn't work out well. I was not called back. So you want to be careful of having preconceived ideas that could come out in even the questions you ask. Don't assume anything. You want to be 100% immersed into the world of the company you're interviewing in. Try and cut down references to other firms. Try and cut down references to other managers or similar styles of management in the firm you're trying to go to. Be 100% in the world, because I can tell you, preconceived ideas could very quickly shut down any possibility of you being called back. Now, you might go through with the interview, but you might just not be called back because of that. You also want to think ahead. So like a game of chess, think ahead, but try to be as well as thinking ahead in the moment, because you do need to think on your feet. So if you get any cues to enable you understand where the interview is going, you need to use that. Interference, noise itself is also a barrier, and tuning out. We don't want people to tune out. Again, it's all about being a great communicator and being able to check out when people are really listening and when they're not. You always want to be observing. Are they listening? Are they getting it? Or are they not? Peter F. Drucker says, the most important thing in communication is hearing what is not said. And what does that mean? Communication is beyond words. I've taught this on the channel before. Words only account for 7% in a face-to-face setting. Tone of voice, 38. Body language, 55. How others believe what we say when we communicate, we got to remember 90% of the impression that we convey has nothing to do with what we actually say. Think about that for a second. Very sobering thought. So we need to mind our language, our body language. Nonverbal communication factors could involve postures, gestures, voice factors, also proximity factors. We should be aware of proximity factors, not just in the interview, but also outside of the interview. Talking about body factors, postures, poses, as you can see on the screen, these poses are not all positive in an interview. You don't want to slouch. You don't want to put your head on your palm. You don't want to rest your head on anything. You want to be straight and upright. You want to look like you're ready to go. John shares a story about this in a book of his, and he talks about how he went for an interview with a friend of his in a grocery store. And at the end of the day, his friend got the job. He didn't get the job. So he wondered, why didn't I get the job? He was young at the time, maybe in his teens. And the owner of the store said, well, your friend moved with purpose. You were just looking at the ketchup bottles. I don't know what you were doing. So he quickly realized body language is very important. One of the keys to understanding nonverbal cues lies in the concept of congruence. So what you're saying must align with your body language. Positivity in speech, positive body language. Your body language could give a lot away. Your facial expressions could give a lot away. Now, voice factors, volume, tone, pitch of voice, and rate of speech are also important. So in an interview, you want to watch that. You want to mirror whatever is been given to you, because you're not taking the lead. You're letting them take the lead, and you're following along. Anger, fear, impatience, unsureness, interest, confidence, and variety of other messages are conveyed by volume, tone, pitch of voice, rate of speech. Think about those all the time. Now, this is the big tip for you. Tell me why we should hire you. Why should you get the job? Your answer needs to be crafted according to these principles that I'm showing you. It's principle number 3, and the sub-principles are: 1, thought. What you know needs to come across in your answer. In other words, you need to connect intellectually. Why should we hire you? You need to connect on the same wavelengths, the same level. So whatever your answer is, it must connect intellectually with the interviewer. Why should we hire you? Hire me because I'm a good guy. No, that's not connected intellectually. What do you know? How do you sell the project management that you can bring? How do you sell what you know? Whether in the world of fully plan-driven, agile, iterative, leadership, management, whatever you can convey about what you know will go down well, especially when you do it with great communication skills. So, what people understand. Now, emotion, something we feel, connecting emotionally. John has a quote that says, people buy into the leader first. They buy into you emotionally first. They're like, oh, but I like that guy, or I like that girl. They buy into you first. What makes you likable? That will be a different topic for another day, but there are some things that can make you instantly likable. Positive body language, positive mental attitude, a smile. Now, don't overdo it. We don't want to come across as flakes, but you want to project positivity. You want to project confidence. You want to project that you're right there where they want you to be, in levels of understanding of the company, in understanding the business unit, in understanding their flavor of project management, whatever it is. You want to be right where they are looking for you to be on that level. You don't want to be diminished. So you want them to feel, you want to connect with them on that emotional level. So emotion, something we feel, connecting emotionally. And last but not least, your track record. It's one thing to say, I know all about this. It's another thing to say it wrong. Oh, I know all about this. Big deal. No. You got to come across as being someone who can convey empathy, someone who is really a soft skills oriented person. Because as you know, in the PMBOK guide, it tells you that the top 2% of project managers are those that connect with people, those that demonstrate superior relationship skills, superior communication skills. So communications is big in an interview. If you cannot communicate effectively in an interview, it could very well just be the end of the interview. And that's why these 3 things, thought, emotion, and action, your action, what you have done, where you have been, the track record. So why should we hire you? You need to craft your message. Now, my job is to give you a blueprint, a framework, but I don't want to give you a cookie cutter answer. There are many cookie cutter answers, but those are quite insincere when one takes them on. But I want to challenge you. Your answer needs to align with these 3 things. Just think about tea. That's right, tea that you drink. Just don't spill any when you get in there. So thought, emotion, and action. Thought, what you know. Emotion, what you convey and how you convey it. How you're able to connect emotionally with them. And also action. You know, as they say, action speaks louder than words. You gotta have a story about where you have been, what you have done, how your experience pans in. Okay? If you're able to craft an answer that has the T factor, thought, emotion, action, you will be much further ahead. Now, those of you that have interviews, I know you've already started crafting your elevator pitch. I want you to make it a 1-minute elevator pitch. Make it a 1-minute succinct elevator pitch. And you know what you should do? Stay in front of a mirror. Practice in front of a mirror. Practice to get your act into 1 minute of power, such that if you're just given that 1 minute in the elevator with the CEO of that company, You need to practice to convey that message, that $1 million message. 1 minute. That's what my challenge to you is. Okay. So that is the master key I wanted to give you to craft that answer. Why should we hire you? T. Thought, what you know. Emotions, you need to get them to connect. You got to come across as being someone who can convey empathy and someone who can connect relationally with people. You know, people can very quickly sum up those folks who are insincere and who are loose cannons. They don't want to hire those. Last but not least, action. Okay. Now, I'll show you one last piece of information that John has in this curriculum. And we call this communication breakdowns. If I communicate what I know, but I do not feel, my communication is dispassionate. You see, something is missing, the action factor. If I communicate what I know, but I don't do it, my communication is theoretical. You see why the action piece is there? You got to be able to connect that action of I've been there. Or if that piece of I've been there does not exist, you have a massive task ahead of you. And I speak on experience. I have been in an interview where I had to convince them that even though I do not have the actions, my knowledge, I had to take it to the max. And I had to illustrate vivid examples when I was conveying my knowledge. It worked. But you gotta be aware of what to do if you know stuff, but you've not done it. You really need to convey a vivid example of what you know and how it applies to the real world. So if I communicate what I know, but I do not do, theoretical. If I communicate what I feel, but I do not know, my communication is unfounded. If I communicate what I feel, but I do not do, my communication is hypocritical. If I communicate what I do, but I do not know, my communication is presumptuous. And if I communicate what I do, but I do not feel, it's mechanical, right? That's why when people are mechanically communicating facts and figures in an academic setting without the experience or without really knowing what's on the other side of the real world, it falls into one of these categories. You know, think about that professor who tells you what to do, but has never been there, done that. The actions are missing, right? What they know, but they do not do. Theoretical. Sounds like someone could be in a college doing that. So these three facets, the T factor, we got to make sure that that is present. Make sure it's present, demonstrate it, live it, rehearse it, going into your next interview. I am sure you will be pleasantly surprised at the outcome. Thank you very much for joining me today. Remember, on this channel, we have lots of other videos that can help you in your practical, pragmatic project management, as well as getting ready for that next interview. I really look forward to you acing it. Remember to share stories with me of how successful you were on your interview. Take care, and I will speak to you again soon. Bye for now.